Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another session of Feathr's Flight School. My name is Noah Barnett. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Feathr. And today I'm excited for you to join this session because we are going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is how you can use nonprofit marketing to grow your end of year fundraising strategies. So sit back, lock in, and let's get started. Feathr is the nonprofit marketing platform designed to help you organize, run, and report on all of your marketing activities. And the reason this is important is because we don't only have a software platform that over 1,500 nonprofits and associations use, but that access to see what's working and what's not working gives us a front row seat to see across the board what strategies are best used for end of year fundraising, for event growth, for member engagement, for new donor acquisition, volunteer engagement, and even program promotion. And what we do every month here on Flight School is bring you a synthesis of that information so that you can learn from what we are learning from these amazing organizations that we get to serve here at Feathr. And again, today we're going to be talking about 8 nonprofit marketing strategies for year-end fundraising. And prior to the session, many of you already shared what your number one goal is at year-end. Daniel mentioned expanding donor network. Naomi said new donors. Jessica said community brand recognition and increase in donations. Sarah said net new donors. Olivia said increase the number of gifts, broaden our donor base, bring in new donors. I think there's a trend. At year end, it's such a great opportunity for us not only to raise mission critical funding for the work we do every day, but also to re-engage and cultivate our community that already is engaged with us, but more importantly, acquire new supporters at year end. And I think that's the promise. Now, as many of you know, the challenges year end fundraising can be extremely stressful. How do I stand out? How do I make sure that we're able to even not only connect with new supporters, but how do we connect with our current supporters? What I hope today is to provide some insights and tactics that you can use to better prepare for end of year this year and increase the number of donors that you reach, increase the amount of fundraising you're able to do during year end, and almost more importantly, increase the connection that you can have between your community and your cause. I know, and this is true always, is that when our community feels connected to the cause, that's what keeps them engaged. That connection to the cause, the trust and confidence in your organization. And through our end of year marketing and fundraising, we can instill that in our audience. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into some of our best practices. But before I do, I want to lay a groundwork from a quote that I've used so often in presentations, and I was reminded about it yesterday on LinkedIn, was a quote by the founder of Save the Children, who was trying to summarize what our job is as marketers, communicators, as fundraisers. And she said this: our role is to devise a means of making known the facts in such a way as to touch the imagination of the world. The world is not ungenerous, but unimaginative and very busy. And the reason I think it's important for us to start with this quote when we talk about end of year fundraising is because we can quickly move to, how do I compete for attention? How do I target? How do I reach? How do I hit my goals? How do I convince people to give? People are so busy. They're doing this, they're doing that. But at the core, at the heart of what we're doing as fundraisers is to make known the facts, the work, the mission critical impact that your organization's making in such a way as to touch the imagination of the world. And so we're bridging that connection with our community back to our cause. We're reinforcing care for the cause. We're building confidence and connection with the community. And we're ensuring that we're presenting it as part of a connection with like-minded community that want to support that. And it also is a starting point because we can get so focused. And I used to do this all the time. I was like, why don't people just give to our cause? It's clear we're helping children eat. We're helping children feel safe. In your case, it might be saving the environment or investing in the communities in your backyard, or maybe it's trying to change policy that's pushing marginalized populations to the back rows. Whatever it is, those are mission critical. And we can get almost caught up about like, why does no one care about this? And I think what the founder of Save the Children got right is she said, The world is not ungenerous, but unimaginative and very busy. That's presenting us the opportunity to be a wedge to unlock and activate potential, not convince people to give, but activate them to get involved with our cause. And if you just remind yourself, your team, as you go into this busy end of year season, the world is not ungenerous, but unimaginative and very busy. And this is the role we have to play to make the known the facts in such a way to touch the imagination of our community, not the world, but your community. And so I wanted to lay this out there first as an anchor point as you're planning your end of year strategies is how do we keep this in mind and design intentionality to activate, not convince, to connect, not convert into our marketing campaigns. With that, let's get started into our 8 strategies that we're going to share. First and foremost, you are already crushing this because you're here today trying to learn on how can you prepare well for end of year fundraising. But the number one tip on how you can do well with your end of year fundraising is preparation. The preparation you do today, that you did earlier this year, that you cultivated earlier in Q1 is going to help you be more successful. Someone on our team recently said that it's not about just a race to the finish. It's not a sprint to the finish, but it's the closing legs of a marathon. And so the work that we've put in prior to end of year is really is going to impact the results that we have. And again, you being here on this call today is showcasing that you're committed to preparation and to learning how you can improve your end of year fundraising. And so what we see typically is organizations that go into end of year, they do typical marketing, or what we call unreliable magic, is they do nothing. They say, hey, our mission's just going to do it. We're too busy. Hair on fire. We're just going to do nothing and hope for the best. People should just give to us. The second group of people just say, we got to do everything. It's kind of the opposite, which is like, hey, we got to do TikTok. We have to do telethons. We need to do billboards. We need to do broadcasts, Facebook, email marketing, etc. And so we get so caught up in the ings of marketing that we forget about the market and the opportunity to connect with our market because we're just so caught up in the activities and doing all the things. The third typical marketing approach at year end is that we just do random things like what I call hopscotch or ad hoc. Is, hey, we try this, and last year we did this, and now we're trying this. And it's really just saying, hey, we're just trying a bunch of random things and hoping for the best. What we encourage as you prepare for year end is what we call good marketing. And good marketing centers around being community first, by being responsive and really starting a conversation. It's not a linear plan that says, hey, we're going to do these 9 things and hope for the best, but rather we're going to create a journey of connection with our community. We're going to prepare for people to respond. And then what are we going to do next? If people don't respond, what are we going to do next? So it's a conversational design of the campaigns, not a linear one. It's also omnichannel. So it's not relying on a single channel like digital or email or social media or direct mail, but rather saying, what is the concert that we can provide for our audience to best connect with them wherever they are, whether they're in their inbox, they're wandering around the web, or scrolling social. It's also measurable. And so we're focused on how do you design end of year campaigns, or any campaign for that matter, where you can measure the true impact of your results. How many people did we activate to take the action that was desired? That could be signing up for an email list. That could be watching a video. That could be making a critical donation to your cause. That could be giving a second gift. It could be any of the things that matter most to you. But again, you want to be able to measure of this concert that we just put on and performed for our community, how well did it drive impact for our organization, and being able to measure that. So we've devised what we call the good marketing framework. And a framework is something that gives you intention and focus, just like Eli here in the photo, but it also is something that's flexible. Eli's using a pencil, he has an eraser. And so this framework is enabling you to think well about campaign design without being structured or rigid. And so we've designed this to help you think about your end of year campaigns as you prepare. And again, preparation is just step 1, and this framework will help you do just that. And the other 7 tips are very practical on ways that you can improve the performance of your campaigns. We have to start with how do we design our campaigns. And so we're going to use the good marketing framework to showcase this. The first part of the good marketing framework is to identify who you are trying to reach. Identify who you are trying to reach. Now, in your case, as many said, is that we're trying to reach net new donors. Okay, well, that's a segment. Who else are you trying to reach? Is your current donors someone you're trying to reach? Maybe it's converting volunteers into longtime donors. There's a lot of other different ways that you can think about who you are trying to reach. The second stage of the good marketing framework is to understand what you know about that community. So if you have current supporters that gave to you last year, you know that they've supported your organization at end of year already. And you know that they've given online, or they've given this amount, or they gave to this appeal last year. All of that context or engagement data that you have on that audience is going to help you better connect with them this year and craft messages that may sound more similar to, hey, last year you supported our program and it made an incredible difference. Can we count on you being a part of our campaign again? And the reason you can position the content or the ask that way is because you know that they did participate last year. Instead of saying, hey, donate now to help us at year end before your tax deductible donation, it runs out. Like, that's very transactional. It's not taking into consideration what this group of people have done with your organization in the past. Now, for those trying to acquire new donors, you might say, well, we don't actually have a relationship with these new donors. So how does this apply? Well, when we're thinking about acquiring new donors, we have to have some sort of hypothesis on who would be most likely to give. And typically, what we do is we want to use our best donors or best volunteers or members to basically map lookalikes to who we would want to reach out to. That could mean, hey, people in my community where I serve people, so people that, let's say, live in Gainesville, Florida, or Phoenix, Arizona, that is an attribute of the people that we want to reach that are net new for us. That's really important. People that live in Phoenix, Arizona versus Gainesville, Florida are experiencing different things right now. If you live in the Northeast during end of year, it's cold. There's an environmental difference to the experience those people have, and that might incorporate into your campaign design. In addition to that, you might say, hey, it's not just people in Phoenix, Arizona, but it's people that have an affinity towards serving children that don't have the same opportunities as those that maybe are in more privileged environments. And what we've seen historically, organization, is that people that have children in their lives or young families tend to be really good supporters of us because they experience directly every day the care and support for children, and thus have an affinity towards giving to help other children during the end of year season. Now, on the flip side, you might say, hey, what we know about our audience is that if we're a sustainable environmental organization in Colorado, that the typical type or the people that typically give to our organization are outdoor enthusiasts. They're people that like skiing and adventuring. They're people that have been to the national parks or the mountains, state parks in Colorado. And so again, this context of even an unknown audience can help shape your campaign because you're leaning into what's typically called like a persona or a prospect persona that then you can embed into how you design your campaigns. So again, first is identifying who you're trying to reach. Second is understanding what you know about them. And it could be an unknown audience like a prospect. It could be a known audience like loyal donors. And that's really important because again, it's going to help you cultivate better connections with your audience. And when we say cultivate connections, this is where you're actually designing your campaigns. This is where you're putting together your emails, you're putting together your digital advertising or your social media campaigns. But again, those are all channels which are deeply important. You use certain channels to reach supporters that are engaged with you. You use other channels to reach net new supporters. However, the content at which what you use through those channels is also important. And so both the channels and the content you use should be informed by what you know about the community you're trying to engage or the group within your community you're trying to engage. And I shared just a few examples and we'll continue to share examples throughout today. Now, once we cultivate connection through a channel or through omnichannel approaches, we now have the opportunity to activate them to take some sort of action. Now, in this case, it might be a donation at year end. Again, in other cases, it might be just to get them to sign up for your email list. And then that nests into another campaign that's trying to cultivate them to give a donation. This activation to action, or what conversion the campaign is optimized for, can be really anything that's important to your organization. The last thing to consider is, what do we want to learn through this campaign? What are we hoping to learn? It's not just the impact outcomes of we got this much money and this many new donors, or this many donors gave to the campaign, but we also are going to get learnings out of the campaign. Hey, people resonated more with the video content than a written story. Or when we talked about advocacy programs, that seemed to activate more people to action versus when we talked about adoption programs for our animal shelter. So advocacy as a theme seemed to really resonate with the audience. This is the good marketing framework, and you can use this across all of your campaigns for end of year to really think well about, how do I design a good campaign for year ends? And this is something you can use at year end, but you can also use it year round. Chandler McFarland, who's one of our strategists here at Feathr, said, if we think of year-end campaigns as the performance, all the hours of practice and meeting with the band and practicing your own scales and practicing the song, that's the year-round thing. It's not one time you practice the song. So again, preparation is key to a successful campaign, and using the good marketing framework is the best approach to preparing well. So you're very thoughtful about, who am I trying to reach? How am I trying to cultivate and connect with them? What am I trying to activate them to take action on? And then what am I going to learn through this campaign? So you can use this structure to design your various campaigns for the different groups within your community you're trying to reach at year ends. Now, number 2 of 8. So we just did number 1. We spent a lot of time on that because preparation is important. Number 2 is hyper segmentation. And I've already highlighted the importance of this as illustrated through the good marketing framework. But I want to dig into this a little bit further, because we often, as marketers that are very, very busy, or as fundraisers, we start with what we want. We want donations, as some said earlier. We want new donors. Then we say, how are we going to get that? Okay, we are going to send emails. We are going to use social media to connect with this audience. We are going to send a direct mail piece. Then we say, who are we going to send this to? That's working the framework backwards, which just only makes it an entangled campaign. And what I would encourage you to do is start first with who you are trying to reach, then determine how you are going to connect with them. And that might end up meaning you have 4, 5, 6, 7 different campaigns, depending on the scale and scope or the size of your organization. But what I will promise you is that focusing on relevancy of your campaigns is going to be more impactful than just optimizing for reach and conversion rates. Looking for how many people can I send this to and hope for a 3% conversion rate is not good marketing. Good marketing is saying, who do we want to reach, and how do I make the most relevant campaign that's going to drive and cultivate connection, and I'm going to activate to action. Focusing on relevancy over reach is always essential. So here are some best practices on how you can do hyper segmentation as you plan for end of year. First is, you want to consider 3 different objectives. You'll have an awareness bucket. So if you're trying to reach new donors, that's the awareness bucket. And so we might design an awareness campaign to inform new individuals that have an affinity towards our cause or organization, but know nothing about us. We want to design a campaign for them. That's a good starting point. The other is engaged segments. So you might have people that gave to you last year, but haven't given to you yet. Maybe they volunteer, but they've never become a donor. Maybe they're a patron at your arts and culture organization, but they've never actually given at year end. That's another segment that you would focus on that would be different. You would use different messaging and different campaigns and content to cultivate that our audience versus the awareness audience. Last but not least, you might have loyal, deeply loyal donors that give to you every year end. You could look back 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 years. I know this was the case at the organization I worked at, where we had a group of donors that were giving to us for 15, 20 years at a time. Now, depending on how old your organization is, how mature it is, you may have people that have just been giving to you for 2 years, and that's significant. But that audience deserves a specific campaign and how you're communicating with them. And so at the bare minimum, looking at awareness, engagement, and cultivation as a starting point is a great way to look at segmentation. Now, going a little bit deeper, if you want to drive more hypersegmentation, is you can look at 5 other variables, and then I'm going to give you some examples of what that means. So the other 5 variables of segmentation are current active engagement. And so like what level of engagement does an audience have, and how does that inform our segments? So it could be like they've given in the last 6 months, or they've visited our website in the last 6 months, but they haven't given yet. It's basically all about like, what is their level of engagement? Like how much is their lifetime giving? Kind of your typical RFM segmentation models, if you're familiar with that. The next is behaviors, like how they behave or how they engage with you at end of year can determine what you might do to follow up. So a great example of this is if I kick off my end of year fundraising campaign on November 1st, I send out an email with a beautiful story about the impact our organization's having, and I invite someone to give. 3 things are going to happen when you do that. First, someone's going to engage with that email and they're going to make a donation. Success, like that's awesome. But now what? What happens now? How do we cultivate them? Just because they gave on November 1st doesn't mean now we don't talk to them until January 18th. What is our next plan for that segment? The second group of people are going to engage with the campaign. They're going to come watch the video. They're going to learn about the campaign, and they're going to not take action. Okay, great. Now what? The third group of people are going to never see your email or never open your email or never do anything with it. Okay, that's fine too. Now what? So this is where behaviors of segmentation can dictate what you do next. And again, this is getting a little bit more sophisticated, but this is a great opportunity to say, hey, when someone does this, now what? And that's another way you can use segmentation to improve your end of year results. The third one is around interest. And so if you've done surveys to your audiences, or you're able to track engagement behavior between, hey, these individual donors are always engaging with our adoption content. These donors are always engaging with our advocacy content. And so maybe I'm going to separate my segments into previous advocacy donors and previous adoption donors. And I'm going to run the campaign against those 2 interests. For you, it could also be, I'm interested in policy versus volunteering, or whatever is the best behavior interest related to your cause. The fourth one is around intent. And so, for example, if someone comes and visits something and leaves, so if someone visits your website, they're walking into your store, your digital storefront, and then they leave, why were they there? What got them there? And how could you use that intent to craft your follow-up campaign? And last but not least is the relationship. How would they describe their relationship with you? And how does that then inform how you follow up on them? So I've already shared a few of these segmentation types, but you can look at lifetime giving, you can look at email engagement or advertising clicks, event attendees, recent volunteers versus visitors. You can look at their motivation or prior support, or even topic alignment. Lots of different ways to do hyper segmentation. The thing I'll caution is that you can get almost into hypertension segmentation, which means it's not effective because you're so focused on like, well, what about this? And what about this? What about this? Now I have 372 segments. That is over segmentation. When we say hyper segmentation, we're saying going beyond just we have big donors and regular donors. What we're going beyond that and looking at engagement, behaviors, and interests to segment further. But you don't want to segment, you don't want to get into like segment paralysis. And so you do want to only segment as much as that you can handle as an organization, but segmenting further to be able to increase relevancy of your campaigns to that group is always going to impact results consistently. So let's carry on. Number 3 of 8. So we've covered number 1, preparation. Number 2 is hypersegmentation or segmentation. Number 3 is email marketing is still the number 1 digital channel. We did a state of nonprofit marketing report back in January, and the most relied on digital channel and the most effective, according to the M&R benchmarks reports, is email. And we rely on it for good reason. About 80%, 86% gave email the number 1, 2, or 3 position. More than half gave email the number 1 position in our survey. And when you look at the M&R benchmarks, they say for every 1,000 fundraising emails an organization sends, they raise about $78 in support, And they also saw the already high open rates continue to increase over the past few years. Some of that's due to how iOS changed their open rates, so I want to acknowledge that. But either way, nonprofits have a very significant open rate compared to other industries. And email is still a very intimate way, even though it's inundated and we have lots of emails in our inbox. It's still one of the most intimate ways to send an email with a story and still connect with someone one-to-one. Because even though you're sending an email to maybe 1,000 people or 10,000 people, they're receiving and reading that email in a one-to-one capacity. It's why direct mail is still powerful, but from digital, email is still really important. You're like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Why are you sharing that as part of a email, as a nonprofit marketing tip? I'm sharing it because it's important that we spend enough effort on email versus some of these other channels that are going to be helpful, like social media or even like digital advertising. Like all of that is really, really important. But the core foundation of your end of year fundraising campaign from a digital perspective should be email. And so we should be very thoughtful about how we design and craft our email strategy and then complement that strategy with our digital advertising, our social media, and even offline campaigns like direct mail or even a phone drive or events at year end. So, a few key success metrics to consider when you're designing and kind of thinking through, like, why am I sending this email and how am I going to measure it, is delivery. So how many of my emails have been delivered to my audience? So let's say I have a group of 1,000 people. When I send this, how many are actually received? Hopefully, if you have a healthy list, which I know many of you probably do, it should be high delivery rates. You're typically seeing somewhere between 95 and 100, or 98% delivery rates. The next key metric might be engagement, which is, hey, how many of the people that received our email actually engaged with the email? It could be that they opened the email. It could be that they click through on the email. Engagement can look a variety of different ways depending on the intention of the actual email. If I just want someone to read the email, I might look at, did they actually read the email? If I want someone to read the email or it's click through, I might measure click through rates. So even when we're thinking about designing each email, we should think about what are the key success metrics we're going to use to measure this, the effectiveness of this. Another one is replies. So maybe you're inviting someone to reply back to you and get more information about the campaign. I think replies is actually an underutilized because it's seen as a non-scalable way. But I think it's a very impactful thing to just send an email and say, hey, reply if we can count on you this year for our end of year advocacy campaign or whatever your campaign is. Last is conversions, and maybe the other is revenue. And so when I'm sending an email, really knowing what I'm optimizing for is important because that's going to impact how you design the emails. You know, what you choose to measure directly impacts performance optimization. And let me give you 3 examples here to kind of outline this. If I'm looking at measuring emails from a revenue per email standpoint, I'm going to always want to have a direct call to action because I'm sending this single email and I'm measuring the effectiveness of email A on how much action or activation email A produces. These can be have higher efficiency because you know almost within 24 hours the results of that. But it is a very short-term approach. It's like, hey, here's the information about the campaign, learn about the campaign, donate to the campaign. There's a place for this, but how you would design your email if you're measuring it based on revenue per email would be different than if you did something like email revenue. So let's say over the course of 2 months, you're going to send 10 emails and you said, hey, we are going to design an email campaign where we're going to use multiple emails to engage this audience. And we are going to measure the impact from the population that received those emails to the campaign. And so we're not looking at per email, we're looking at over the course of 10 emails, how the engagement rates and the overall impact of that cultivation did. This can typically be better results because you're looking at it collectively over multiple touch points. It also can be more conversational. And so you don't have to, as the common analogy is, you don't have to ask someone to marry you right away. Like you can kind of cultivate. You can say, hey, learn about this campaign. Hey, here's a story of why this supporter supports our campaign. You have a lot more touch points to get the end result versus just hoping that a single touch point does this. Again, how you design those emails would be different if you're using this measurement stick. The last one is overall revenue. So let's say I'm trying to target donors that gave last year at year end. I might be sending emails to them, but I also might be doing digital advertising to them. I might be sending direct mail to them. And so if I'm focused on not trying to capture the donation or the impact just from a single channel like email, again, I can orchestrate the touch points across an omni-channel approach to generate the results. Holistic results, longer feedback loop, but typically a higher ROI. Around 200% increase when you engage with your audience through multiple channels versus just a single channel. So the main goal here is email is very, very important and should be foundational to your end of year fundraising strategy. We see that even here with our Feathr customers when they're using our email marketing tools to run their campaigns. Starting with email, starting with your audience, who you're targeting, hyper segmentation plus email, then complementing that with the other channels and being an omni-channel approach is huge. Now, number 4 of 8 is digital advertising. One thing we saw in our state of nonprofit marketing report as well, is that we as a sector, as an industry, are doubling down on digital, especially advertising. So digital ads are one of the top channels that nonprofits were investing in, and for really good reason, because what we see is that digital advertising complemented with your other organic channels like email or direct mail or events can have huge impact on your overall end of year results. And we've seen that firsthand even with our customers who use Feathr to run their digital advertising and their email campaigns, that digital advertising only or email only, digital advertising plus email always outperforms the others. And again, this is just a chart on showcasing where people were doubling down on their advertising budget. It's very much focused on digital advertising. So social, display, and search. Here are a few advertising channels based on the objective that you might want to consider during the end of year. So for example, if you are trying to acquire net new supporters, you might use affinity targeting as a channel to reach those like affinity or lookalike audiences for your prospecting. So many of you at the beginning of today's call said at end of year, I want to try to acquire new donors. The thing I hear a lot is like, we want to acquire new donors and we just use email. The thing about acquiring new donors just with email is that unless those emailed people you haven't given before, you're really limited to your pool of net new donors. Using something like affinity targeting based on what your best donors look like can help you expand. So a great example of this that we've used often is you're an environmental organization in Colorado, and you know that primarily business women in Colorado that are outdoors enthusiasts that have over $150,000 income are your ideal donor persona. You can build those audiences in the affinity targeting within Feathr and be able to reach those with your end of year campaign. You can also then use things like search intent. So you can say, hey, I not only want Colorado business women that make over $150,000, but I want that segment plus those that tend to vote for environmentally friendly policy and have recently shopped at Patagonia, REI, et cetera. So you're layering in this intent detail and being able to create this profile of a prospective donor that has a high likelihood or affinity to connect with your cause. You're just introducing them to your organization as a conduit to invest in that cause. And end of year is a great opportunity to do that. The other one is if you're thinking about using digital advertising to cultivate deeper connections with your audience. I've mentioned this before, but if you're already connecting via email or direct mail to your audience, you can complement that with what's called email mapping or contact mapping through a digital advertising platform like Feathr. And then you're able to basically surround them with additional messages that just remind them of the campaign while you're emailing them, while you're doing direct mail. And that omni-channel concert is what can drive increased results. And then lastly, you can use something called retargeting to be able to engage people that come to your campaign and then don't take the action, using digital advertising to re-engage them, like this case where the Sea Turtle Conservancy said, hey, did you forget something? The sea turtles are waiting. So again, you're using that audience intent that they were on your donation page, they just didn't complete that. And I know I'm a victim of that often. I go to buy something or I get distracted and then I walk away. You see an ad that says, hey, you left this in your cart. This is a very similar tactic that you can use for your end of year campaigns. If you're interested in learning how Feathr can help you do this and run these types of digital advertising overlays with your email campaigns or your website engagement, if you just put a +1 in the chat, we'll be happy to arrange a conversation with you following today's presentation. So just put a +1 in the chat if you're interested in learning more about how you can do this in Feathr. And again, we'll be happy to follow up with you after today's presentation. So let's keep going. We're on number 5. I've already talked about retargeting, but I want to talk about it even further as our number 5 tip of 8 on how you can improve your end of year campaigns. So retargeting as a concept is basically the act of re-engaging someone that's done something with your organization already. So for example, if you've sent emails to a bunch of people, or maybe you sent out a direct mail and someone came to your website or walked into your digital store, retargeting as a strategy is we are going to re-engage them because we know that they did something recently, but they didn't activate to action. So we were able to cultivate connection, but we weren't able to activate to action. And retargeting is a strategy for that segment to say we are going to retarget them through a variety of channels, both email and digital advertising, and I'll explain how that works in a minute, to re-invite them in. And so this is a great option, an incredible option if you haven't used this at year end, where you say, hey, we are crushing it with our end of year campaigns. We have brilliant emails. We have this great theme. We have beautiful stories. We have a direct mailer that gets a lot of response. The problem is we're not getting people to activate to action. So we're cultivating deep connections. We're really engaging with that, but we're not activating them. Retargeting can be a core strategy to help you with end of year because you're doing great work. You just need to add an additional touch point to pull people into that activation. So typical marketing really focuses on, hey, we're going to send emails, we're going to do direct mail, we're going to do some social media, and we're going to see what the results are. With retargeting, most people are not going to engage with your emails, but with retargeting and using a platform like Feathr to close the connection gap, you're able to increase your connection because you're using a multitude of other channels to reconnect with your audience. And that's really the power of retargeting. So here are a few great examples. The International Justice Mission is a beautiful organization that helps rescue children from modern slavery and advocate for their protection. And they have a great end of year campaign where they're saying, hey, slavery still exists. And they're inviting people to be a part of this end of year campaign to stand alongside and with the children that are still enslaved. But they used retargeting ads like you see here, where someone is looking up a recipe for maybe a holiday meal, and they're reminded about the campaign. One thing I see as a common mistake with retargeting is that we measure the effectiveness of retargeting on how many people click on that ad right there and go back to the website. And from our own personal experiences, we say, if I'm looking up a recipe, I might see an ad, but I ignore it. The thing is that it's a reminder. And typically you need 7 to 12 reminders to take action. And so if I'm looking at a recipe and I see an ad for IJM, I may see it and not fully process it. But then when I get that email back in my inbox 3 days later that reminds me of that campaign, all of these individual touch points are going to increase the likelihood of my response because I'm familiar with it. I'm not required, I'm not repaying a tax to be like, wait, what is this? What does IJM do, etc. We're providing the surround sound experience versus kind of these monotone messages. Another great example here is Act 6 of Degrees of Change, where they were basically saying, hey, people that visited are leaders of scholars and agents of change. We want to remind them when they're navigating their news site, wandering the web, scrolling social. This isn't just when they're wandering the web, but you can also measure the impact, or you can use retargeting, via social media as well. So Facebook and Instagram via Meta. And it's not just advertising. You can also use retargeting emails to remind people as well. So the great example of this is where someone comes to your website, they visit your website, they review the campaign, and then you send a personalized email to them afterwards and say, hey, Sarah, I saw that you visited our website, or I noticed that you visited the website and to learn more about our year-end campaign. Given that you've supported us last year, I wanted to personally reach out and ask if you had any questions and if we can count on your support again this year. The reason that works is because I know that I invited Sarah to view the campaign through a broader email. She engaged with that, and I answered the question, what now? And now I'm able to do a auto send, or what's called a smart email, where basically I can send that more personalized email as a reminder and another touch point to, again, know that Sarah is seen as a valuable supporter, but also giving Sarah another opportunity to connect with our campaigns. Sarah asked a great question in the chat. She said, how do we measure efficacy of that, or efficiency or efficacy of the ad campaign if it's not in clicks? How do we measure the effectiveness? That is a great question. How we do it inside of Feathr, or how our customers do it inside of Feathr, is that we don't look at your campaigns in silos of channels. So you can look at, okay, who saw our ads and who clicked on our ads and what was the impact of that? You can do that. But what we encourage more with the Good Marketing Framework, and we reinforce this with how people use our software, is they're actually looking at the audience they're trying to engage. They're doing an orchestration of activities. They're sending emails, they are tracking website behaviors, and they're showing ads. And so we're actually seeing what was the impact against the audience's response, whether they click on an ad, click on an email, visit the website, whatever it is. It's that the orchestration of activities is targeted at a specific group of your community. And we're measuring the effectiveness of all of those combined and deduping conversions. So Facebook's not getting credit for a conversion and your email's getting credit for a conversion. It's rather saying, of all of these activities, how did we drive and activate action? You do have to have an integrated platform to be able to do this, Sarah, or you have to trust the platform's view through conversion metrics. So you'll see like a direct conversion metric and a view through conversion metric, which is basically saying that someone saw the ad and then did the desired action later through some other mechanisms within a window of time. Usually it could be 7 days, 14 days, 30 days. It's really up to you to determine what that window of view through conversion should be. Here's another great example of the Association of Texas Professional Educators, where again, they're inviting someone back, not to make a donation, but to actually join a program and become part of their membership program. So we've walked through 1 through 5. Now we're on number 6. We're going to chug along because we have 15 minutes left together. This is to use CRM retargeting to reactivate donor list with advertising and emails. So you're sending direct mail out, you're sending emails. You can use those same lists to basically upload those to a platform like Feathr and be able to showcase display advertising like the Humane Society did for their amazing Give Day, where they're, instead of just focusing on these own channels like email and mail, they wanted to also surround their partners with advertising across digital and social. And they were able to do that across recent and previous donors, former volunteers, previous event attendees, and even list of unsubscribers. So someone that basically supported you in the past and said, hey, I don't want to receive emails for you anymore. You're still able to use something like email mapping to be able to reach them with digital advertising and social advertising. Great opportunity, again, to enhance your year-end campaign. So this is one of those things that if you're already doing a lot of email and direct mail, this is a great way to enhance your results for a low investment and to be able to increase the surround sound experience you're providing each group you're targeting. Number 7 is really focused on if you're trying to acquire new donors. So there are 2 types of advertising that are relatively underutilized by nonprofit organizations. The first is called geofencing, and the second is called search intent advertising. First is called geofencing, and the second is search intent advertising. How geofencing works is basically picking a specific geolocation and saying, I want to target people that are in this specific location during this specific time frame. This is great for community-based organizations that are trying to fundraise or raise money and awareness within a specific area. It's also a great opportunity where if your ideal or prospective supporters tend to go to specific locations. So, for example, think of it like a big outdoor shopping complex where you're like, hey, instead of targeting all of the different neighborhoods and whatnot that I'm trying to do, because I don't know where people live that I'm trying to engage, but let's say if they go to like Bass Pro Shop or REI or some other thing, like an environmental cause in Colorado might say, like, we're going to actually geofence that location. And when people are in that location and then leave for up to a certain amount of days, I want them to see my organization's advertising. The other opportunity, which I just hinted at, is what's called historical geofencing. This is great for if there were recent gatherings of key supporters, or if your ideal donors have traveled to a specific place, and people that are leaving that location might be an ideal donor for your organization. So this could work like, let's say Disney World. I'm just going to use a roundabout saying and say, hey, people that go to Disney World, when they leave, I want to target them for 2 weeks because I'm assuming that maybe they have a higher disposable income, even though they probably just spend it all on Disney because Disney's very expensive. But either way, maybe people that go to Disney are likely to have kids or be connected with kids' causes, and I want to engage them with my digital advertising over time. So again, it can be location-based, like if they're in this location, target them, or it can be historical geofencing, which is I want to target people that were in this location for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever, after they leave that location, no matter where they go. This is also great for like conferences. So we have organizations that, let's say, are trying to engage doctors, and the doctors have a huge annual conference where they all gather in Denver, Colorado at a specific convention center for a specific period of time. Well, while they're there, we're not trying to engage them. But when they leave, we are trying to engage them. And so that's another great way to target. It's not 100% accurate, meaning you're not just going to only get the 7 people that were in that room that day. You usually have to do a radius of a small radius to be able to reach it. But you're increasing your likelihood that your ideal or affinity aligned supporters are going to see your cause. And you can see that you like Hope in a Future was targeting Arizona. And so when people were in a specific downtown city in Arizona, they're presenting an ad that's saying, hey, Arizona foster credit, tax credit, you can give to our organization at year end and be able to deduct that in a different way this Giving Tuesday. Hey, Sally, you're asking a great question. It really depends because we're really not charging for advertising at Feathr. You're just using Feathr to run your digital advertising across a variety of types and doing your email marketing and website engagement tracking. What I would recommend is that if you are interested, what Ellie can do, who's in the background right now, is she can just make sure we connect with you afterwards. It's going to be best for us to help answer that question more specifically for you. So a few geofencing ideas that I already mentioned. The second one I mentioned was search intent targeting. So if you think about geofencing location as location-based, search intent targeting is doing geofencing, but for search queries. What I mean by this is not the blue links you see when you search on Google. That would be a Google search ad. What I'm saying is that when people search for certain things, when they leave the search results, you want to then surround them with digital advertising. That's what search intent advertising is all about. So for example, if I was searching for children's camps over winter break, you might not have anything to offer someone searching for children's camps during winter break in Arizona. However, you might know that people that search for things like children's camps in Arizona have a higher likelihood to give to an organization that's providing free camps to children in Arizona, for example. That's what search intent advertising is really about. And so you can do cause alignment. So maybe they're searching for specific causes, and you not only want to target them in the search results, but you want to target them when they leave the search results. You can do lookalike affinities. You can even do like organizations. So maybe I'm searching for Operation Smile. You're an organization that would say, hey, if someone's looking to support an organization like Operation Smile, they might love and want to support an organization like us. Again, that's a search intent advertising that you can do. And it's a great way to acquire best fit donors in a cost-effective way using digital advertising to complement your other awareness campaigns. Okay, so last but not least, number 8 is using omni-channel marketing to expand reach and ROI. I've mentioned this throughout today's presentation, but one of the most important ways that are most impactful ways for you to improve your end of year results is to think first about who you're trying to reach. So in this case, you're trying to reach a prospective beneficiary, and you're going to use multiple channels to connect with them. You might also be looking at a prospective supporter, Colorado woman, business owner, income over blank, and outdoorsy. I'm going to use multiple channels: email, digital advertising, personalized outreach, retargeting ads, social media, maybe even direct mail to re-engage them. Omni-channels approach typically have a 200% increase on your campaign results. And so you can see here where we're using historical geofencing, we're doing a keyword search, and we're doing affinity targeting to reach new donors that look like our best donors. Same with cultivation. You have active supporters. Don't just rely on email. Don't just rely on direct mail. Expand and look at it as an omni-channel experience across social, the web, the inbox, and offline connections. Same with website visitors. Someone comes to your website. Don't just rely on your website to do all the work. When they leave your website, consider doing retargeting via ads or email, and then even look at re-engaging them with future email campaigns. Omni-channel approach is really going to get you to the best results. Here's a great example where someone's doing emails and ads to the same audience. One of our customers, same here, where they're doing both site retargeting and they're doing single send emails. So when someone visits the website, they're still showing display advertising to them after they leave if they haven't activated to action. Now, a bonus tip with 5 minutes left is just keep it practical, start small, and really focus. Focus always wins in these scenarios. And so even though we talked about, probably 25 different ideas that you might have written down or you might take back to your team, you have to first stay practical. Keep it practical, start small. Use the good marketing framework to design your campaigns. And what we hope is that this end of year will be your best end of year ever, and that those wish list items of what your priorities were at the beginning of today's presentation will really come true. A few reminders. Attention is the most valuable currency. So as you're thinking about stewarding attention, just keep that in mind. It's not just about transactions. It's about engaging and cultivating connection and then activating to action. Your competition goes way beyond other nonprofits. So it's not just, hey, their end of year is filled with a lot of asks from other organizations, but rather you're competing with Netflix and the 24/7 news cycle and everything else in between. And so thinking holistically about how do I increase the relevance of my campaigns, not just the reach, are going to help you drive the most results. We have a, oops, sorry about that. Let me do this. Here we go. We have a digital marketing toolkit for year end. I would love to invite you to download. So if you're looking at this right now on the screen, you can just scan that QR code and it'll open up a URL. Ellie, if you don't mind dropping the URL as well in the chat so people can take a look at that. It's feathr.co/year-end-toolkit. That's going to give you a bunch of other ideas and guidance on how you can make your year end the best yet. We've also included, and I want to highlight this, a swipe file of digital advertising examples that you can learn from. And our brilliant designer, Emily, has actually put together templates that you can use to more easily design your digital advertising this year and automatically resize them and do all sorts of cool stuff. So it's not only resources and ideas, but it's also a practical set of examples and templates that you can use this year end. So definitely check that out. And again, if you're interested in learning how you can use Feathr's nonprofit marketing platform to run and report on all of your end of year marketing campaigns, let us know in the chat. You can drop a 1 or you can drop a 1 in the chat if you want to learn more about Feathr. If you're a current customer and you're like, wow, I can do all of this with Feathr, how do I do that? You can put a 2 in the chat and we'll make sure we follow up with you with your customer success manager. So if you are interested in learning more, drop a 1. If you're a current customer and you want to dig deeper on how you can better leverage Feathr, just put a 2 in the chat. And again, so grateful for all of your time. We have a few minutes left. So again, if you're interested in learning more about Feathr, please drop a 1 in the chat. If you are a current Feathr customer and you want to dig deeper into how Feathr can help you power your end of year campaigns, put a 2, and we'll make sure you get follow-up accordingly. Nicole, I see you. Jennifer, I see you. Thank you all again for being here. Again, 1 in the chat if you're interested in learning more about Feathr, and we will have our team reach out to you following today's presentation. For everyone else, we will send the recording and the slides and a summary of today's presentation so that you can share this with your team and you can use this as you prepare for a successful end of year campaign. Again, so grateful that you're here, and we hope that you have the best year end ever. Take some chances, make some mistakes, and get messy this year end, according to Miss Frizzle's guidance. So thank you, everyone. Really appreciate you giving us your time, and we'll see you in a couple weeks on another session of Feathr's Flight School. Thanks, everyone.